Hey everybody, hope you're still doing well. Thanks for joining us for lesson 4 of our series, Stressed Out. Also be sure to tune in on Sunday. We'll be jumping into lesson 2 of the series, I Am. And I'll also be letting you know what our series for the next few Wednesdays is, so you don't want to miss that. Also, since we've been in quarantine for so long, some of y'all might have forgotten what month it is, maybe even what day. Sunday is Mother's Day, so be sure and do something nice for her. All right. So over the past 3 Wednesdays, we've been looking at stress and also the life of Abraham and what we can learn from it. Today's probably the hardest form of stress that we'll cover in this series and hardest form of stress we'll ever deal with, and that's getting stressed out by loss. Loss can look different for different people. Most of the time we see loss as the death of a family member or a friend, but loss can be a lot of other things as well. Major move, losing a job, even growing older, we begin to lose things as well. A major loss for me was almost 2 years ago. 2 years ago this month, actually. That was when my retina in my right eye detached unexpectedly. I ended up having 3 surgeries to try and fix that eye. I wasn't able to work for 4 months. I ended up going into a really deep depression. And it took me a while, but I had to grieve for the loss of what my life had been and to come to terms with the fact that I'll probably never be able to see normally out of that eye ever again. Now, I'm thankful, very thankful the doctors were able to save what vision they could, but it completely changed my life and the way I view and see the world. There are many types of loss in our life. We lose people who are important to us or special to us, like I said, through death. Sometimes they move away. Sometimes we experience a conflict with them. Sometimes it's just a change in social circles. Change can also be a form of loss, though. Transitioning from middle school to high school to college, moving to a new town, going to a new school, getting a new family member. We can experience a loss in our security. Isn't that the truth? We've gone through that with the quarantine, the pandemic, the oil prices dropping, loss of security. Failure can also be a sense of loss by losing a big game, failing a test, bombing a science project. As Christians, how do we deal with loss? This lesson is going to help us figure out some answers to that question. So, like I said, we've been going through the life of Abraham. So today we're in Genesis 23. So just follow along with me. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, "Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial." The Hittites replied to Abraham, "Listen, my lord, you are an honored prince among us. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way." Then Abraham bowed low before the Hittites and said, "Since you're willing to help me in this way, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me buy his cave at Machpelah, down at the end of his field. I'll pay the full price in the presence of witnesses, so I'll have a permanent burial place for my family." Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the Hittite elders of the town. "No, my lord," he said to Abraham, "please listen to me. I'll give you the field and the cave. Here in the presence of my people, I give it to you. Go and bury your dead." Abraham again bowed low before the citizens of the land, and he replied to Ephron, as everyone listened, "No, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "My lord, please listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver, but what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead." So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price and paid the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah, near Mamre. This included the field itself, the cave that was in it, and all the surrounding trees. It was transferred to Abraham as his permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. Then Abraham buried his wife, Sarah, there in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave were transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for use as a permanent burial place. All right, long story, but here are some observations that we can make along the way. First, Sarah's death and Abraham's mourning. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. Interesting thing to note here is Sarah is the only woman to have her age listed when she died. Think about that. This signifies her importance in the Bible. Sarah was Abraham's friend, spouse, companion, lover. They experienced many hills and valleys in their life together. Second, significance of proper burial. Death and burial included deep traditions. Failing to honor a dead person showed disrespect to that person. In the Old Testament, people took ample time to mourn and grieve, usually measured in days. It was very important to be buried in one's homeland, where a person's family roots were. Third, purchase of the land. Abraham didn't own land for a proper burial for Sarah. Think back to the beginning of this series, God's original promise. God told Abraham to leave his land and go to the land God would give him. He would make Abraham into a great nation. This was a promise, a covenant, and an act of faith. So how did Abraham view his loss? First off, looking forward. We're not suggesting that Abraham just brushed his wife aside and considered her a casualty of faith. On the contrary, he handled her burial in a highly respectable fashion. But when Abraham could have given up or moved back to his family's homeland, he continued to follow God in the midst of his loss. Second, getting up and walk. Just as it was at the beginning of God's promise, week 1 in our series, so it is here. It's not what Abraham did, it's why he did it. And that's the lesson in this story. Because Abraham was faithful, he had the strength to keep walking and not give up. He knew the best way to honor his wife was not just with a proper burial, but obedience and faith in God. Third, not just believing, but being faithful. Check out Hebrews 11, 8 through 10. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going, and even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in tents, and so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. True faith will shape and affect everything we do, say, and perceive. This means that when we experience loss, we turn to God for strength. We remember his promises. We trust in his goodness. We learn in those times just how faithful God is. Abraham had complete faith that God's promise would still be fulfilled. He had faith for the future, so this loss or circumstance was not a setback, but a vehicle to keep moving forward in his faith. Abraham had received very little of what God promised in his lifetime, yet this story demonstrates that he continued to believe faithfully despite many difficulties because he had a faith for the future. For Abraham, loss, again, was a vehicle moving forward in his faith. We also need to see loss in the same way. So often we experience loss and lose faith. when we really need to be pushing through and persevering just as Abraham did. So here's your memory verse for the week, Philippians 3:12. Not that I've already obtained all this, or have already been made perfect, but I press on to take hold for that of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Thanks for joining us for the last lesson in Stressed Out. I hope these 4 lessons have helped you in navigating your stress and how we as Christians need to deal with our stress. Tune in Sunday for our next lesson in the I Am series. As always, you can tune in here on Sundays and Wednesdays for new content. Like, share, and subscribe so you know exactly when our new content comes out. Leave a comment down below. You can email us at sunsetyouthministry@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also find links to that down below on our website at sunsetyouthgroup.com. Have a great rest of your day.